Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for holding tight, during that tough technical difficulty. I'd like to welcome everyone to Zeifmans non-resident digital event series, Technology and Startups Edition. Today's topic is expansion and innovation. My name is Chaim Rosner, and I'm a U.S. tax manager at Zeifmans and a member of our Technology and Startups team. Before we start our interview with Jonathan Gabay, National Manager of Knowledge-Based Industries at TD Business Banking, Market Segment Strategy Group, I want to share with you a bit about Zeifmans. Zeifmans is a full-service tax accounting and consulting firm based in Toronto, Canada. We go beyond traditional accounting services to offer strategic business guidance and will work with you from day one of your startup through your IPO and beyond. Please feel free to ask questions throughout our interview with Jonathan, and we will answer any questions. So I'd like to welcome Jonathan. Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'll explain, my current role at TD, and then maybe I'll explain a little bit about my background and where I came from. So at TD, basically, my overarching mandate is to grow TD's market share in the tech sector nationally in our mid-market commercial bank. And so I do that by talking to all the bankers across the country about tech initiatives and expanding their networks in the different regions. And then also the other hat that I wear, in order to grow our market share, we are expanding our efforts in lending to tech companies across the country. And so what's new to the bank is the idea of SaaS lending, software as a service lending. And so these are guidelines that I've developed and have notional approval from our partners in risk to actually do lending in this regard. So the big difference, and the accountants in the room are going to know this, this is lending sometimes to EBITDA negative companies. And so that is a new concept to the bank. And again, we are actively doing those deals now. And this is traditionally not exclusively for VC-backed companies, but predominantly. And then other, regular tech companies as well. And so just a bit of background of where I came from. I actually joined TD from RBC. Been in the tech sector now for about 8 years. Actually, no longer, 10 years, because I started in tech at IBM. So when I was at RBC, I was the banker to a lot of tech startups. Actually, some of the former guests on the Zeifman call, I was related to them in that regard. And so, yeah, I was a banker to many startups in the Toronto region, all the way up to publicly traded multinationals. So that's me.
Okay, great. Now to start with the questions, it's really a three-part question where I'll ask the first two questions first because they kind of go hand in hand. How should a non-resident based business look for financing in Canada if they're looking to expand their business into Canada? And the second part of the question is, how should a non-resident based business look for financing in Canada if they're looking to create a business in Canada?
Okay. So I'll touch on a few things, and it might, kind of address both of those. So there's a couple different scenarios that could play out. So if there's a company abroad that's looking to expand in Canada, so one way to look for financing is if the company sets up a Canadian corporation and a Canadian sub, and that sub is standalone, and it operates and it's generating revenue and income. The bank can look at that to provide financing to. And without getting too technical, that is one way that we could do it and potentially provide financing, but it's predominantly on the strength of the Canadian sub. And then there could be, we would look at the parent, wherever, they're based and see the strength there. So that's one way. But other things to look at or consider, and this isn't directly a financing question, but something to be aware of, that if there are companies abroad or startups abroad, the government of Canada has a startup visa program that could be explored. So the government is wanting to attract tech talent to Canada. And so if you're bringing a company and if you're going to employ Canadians, there's a program, the startup visa program, that can be looked at to fast track the visa process to expand into Canada. So it's not financing, but it it's a way to help ease the transition to Canada. And another thing to know that is actually a good source of financing is SR&ED credits. I'm not a tax expert here, so talk to the people at Zeifman for this, but basically, if you set up a Canadian-controlled private corporation in Canada, and that entity is conducting R&D, that R&D is eligible for tax credits, because again, the concept is the government of Canada is wanting to incentivize R&D development in Canada. So those SR&ED credits, after you develop a history or a track record with that, the bank can actually provide financing against those SR&ED credits. So that's another source. And then probably the final you can look at other organizations like the BDC. So that's the Business Development Bank of Canada, where sometimes the bank will, so TD Bank or the other major banks will partner with the BDC to provide some sort of financing solution to the company. So where our risk threshold is, or where we might not be comfortable just doing it alone, if we partner with the BDC, we might together get to a place where we're comfortable. So that's another avenue to explore.
Okay, great. Yeah, I believe you also touched upon the next question, which was, are there any programs that startups should be aware of when looking for fund, which you mentioned before, the different programs. Is there anything else that you can include?
Yeah, totally. So again, just to reemphasize, look into the startup visa program. So that's a big one. It's popular, and it's very beneficial. So that's one. You can look at other kind of organizations like Mars or the Lazaridis Institute. I know that they do, scaling up programs, but there might be entities like Mars, which is an innovation hub in Toronto, or the Lazaridis Institute is kind of an organization that helps tech companies scale. I'm just using those as examples. They might have programs themselves specifically targeted to companies from abroad to relocate in Canada. So I'm not sure if Mars or Lazaridis Institute has these programs, but entities or institutions like this might have those type of programs.
That's great. What's the number one quality you look for in a startup?
That's a good question. So I can answer that from two different perspectives. So one, I'm not a VC, I'm not a venture investor, but if I was, and a common answer that they would usually give is the number one quality is the management. What's the quality of management? Do I want to do business with them? Are they smart? Are they capable? Can they execute? So that's, again, I'm not a VC, but that's kind of the VC type answer that I normally hear. As a banker, as a lender, the number one quality, I do place a strong emphasis on the quality of management, but it's also probably the biggest quality that I look for as a lender is track record. So track record provides a lot of comfort. If your company is growing historically and consistently, that gives a lot of comfort. If there's just no track record, it's pretty tough to make an assessment. So yeah, I would probably say track record, but there's many others.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry that we're running out of time, basically because of technical issues. We have two more questions. In your opinion, what's the biggest hurdle startups have to face when moving from the early stage to the mid stage to enterprise?
So very commonly, the number one and two challenges is access to capital. So, that's what we provide at the bank. So that's obvious. There's many different sources of capital throughout the journey. So at the early stage, you're looking at angel investors or some VC investors, and as you're scaling up, you're tending to go to traditional VCs like for VC financing and doing equity raises. As the company is a little bit more established, then and the company matures, then you're looking at bank financing, and that could take the form of BDC debt or even senior bank financing, TD being a senior bank or a senior lender. So that's kind of the capital spectrum. And then the number two challenge is talent, access to talent. It's it's a war for talent, and it's hyper competitive for talent. And this is a wonderful thing about Canada, and especially Toronto or other tech hubs, is that there's many tech companies out there. And so if you're a software developer or a software engineer or some technical skill set like AI or machine learning, there is no shortage of demand for that skill set. And so it makes it very hard to find that talent and retain them. So I would say those are probably the 1 and 2 challenges that a company is gonna face.
Great, thanks. And we'll wrap this up with the final question: is what roles does the bank play with non-resident startups entering Canadian markets?
Yeah, it's a good question. The role that we typically play, at least at the outset, is obviously if you're a non-resident and you're looking to expand into Canada, you're going to need bank accounts to send and receive and collect funds. So, I mean, that's obvious that you're going to need a banking relationship, and it starts there. But then the bank can act as an advisor as well, because you're not only going to just need a bank account, but you're going to need tax advice, so we can introduce you to partners like Zeifmans, or legal advice, so we can introduce you to our legal network. Or if you're early stage and you're looking to raise angel or VC funding, we can provide introductions to our network of angel and VC to that community. So really, aside from just providing a bank account and all of that, every bank can do that. Really, the next step or the role that we can play is to act as an advisor to get you connected to the right organizations to land smoothly.
That's great. Any closing thoughts?
No, I would just say if anyone who's watching has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Reach out to Zeifmans. They can share my information, and happy to ask or answer any questions.
Yeah, if you have any if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us or Jonathan, and we'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.